yourself and your family against the unavoidable ups and downs of economic and industry cycles. Because of the financial risk that come from relying on one source of income, such as a job or a business, consider creating at least one or more additional streams to generate cash flow. The benefits of having multiple streams of income include peace of mind because you know there will always be money to spend. Also, you will earn much more than you currently earn from your day's job. Therefore, you will live bigger and better. Your additional income streams can be active, passive, or a combination of the two. Some may pay you for doing something that you love, active, while others can provide income for you without having to do much of anything at all, passive. Here are multiple streams of income opportunities: selling information in hard book formats, selling information in the form of downloadable ebooks, making money from referral opportunities, training classes, consulting opportunities, dealership opportunities, design opportunities, manufacturing opportunities, investment opportunities. The list is definitely not exhaustible. To create wealth, you must make investment that will create dependable streams of income flows, independent of your main source of income. The time to act is now. Begin implementing this practice, and before you know it, within months, you can be enjoying the benefits and the financial security and freedom that comes from having multiple streams of income.
We want to talk about rights, there are obligations. I'm not saying that this government is a saint, it's very far from it. But there are things that we can do to make it better, and that's the challenge I'm throwing to you. You don't want to build this nation? I don't know where else you want to go. If I had a choice, I'll come back. When I stand outside and I hear what you have to say about this country that I know that I can die for as one, then I'm really sad because you're young. You have education, you have tools, you have a huge future ahead of you, and you're condemning yourself before you started on that journey. So please don't do that. Please don't.
This vaccine is safe, and it has been certified safe and usable by NAFTA.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package. President Buhari seeks Senate's amendment of Electoral Act 2022.
More reactions trail third bill seeking special seats for women in parliament.
I want to urge Nigerian women to remain resilient and strong, that despite what has happened today, it is not yet over.
Nigeria Armed Forces renewed cooperation with the Egyptian military to boost combat efficiency.
Hoping that it will afford us opportunity of finalizing the MOU.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on two topics: 2 years of COVID-19 in Nigeria, plus ongoing efforts at amending the 1999 Constitution.
So it was in December 2019 that the world, and indeed the World Health Organization, received the big news with a bang. A cluster of pneumonia-like cases had broken out in Wuhan, China. The cause? Unknown, at least then. So let's fast forward days into the new year, that's 2020. That outbreak of pneumonia-like mutated in different forms into an epidemic and then to a pandemic. And of course, you know what I'm talking about. It's the coronavirus or COVID-19.
Now, what was thought of at the time as some scare from some faraway land that will fade after a while never, of course, really caught on until, as we saw in the days and weeks following that disclosure, the disease raged on, ravaged homes, families, institutions, and countries, exposing the inadequacies of healthcare systems across several nations around the world, and left, of course, the economies, in some cases, in tatters.
Indeed, and of course it brought the whole world to a standstill. All non-traditional systems and, of course, way of livelihoods, was arrested. Internal body system also, according to some people, were demobilized, and of course the world was put on lockdown at different points, now forcing several new normals which still persist.
Now, 2 years on, more than 5 million people worldwide are said to have lost their lives to the coronavirus pandemic, with Nigeria having its own fatalities, having, of course, confirmed the index case of the COVID-19 on the 27th of February 2020 through an Italian.
Because that Italian came through the Lagos International Airport, that's the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, and went on to Ogun State where he worked. But of course, prior to that announcement, the federal government had kicked in the multi-sectoral coronavirus preparedness group, and that was led by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, which immediately activated a National Emergency Operations Center to address, the health scourge.
Well, the approach towards containing the mutating virus saw, of course, persons, institutions, and the entire nation work out several figures, graphics, and attitudes towards mitigating the virus, as well as the impact on lives and livelihoods. It's been a mixed grill 2 years on since the index case was first identified in Nigeria. But exactly what is it we are dealing with 2 years after the first case was reported in the country? Is life getting back to normal, or is corona still a disease we all should be scared of?
Well, in 2 years, statistics from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, show records of over 250,000 cases of the virus at the moment, no less than 3,000 deaths, and of course from 4,400, I beg your pardon, that's 4.4 million samples tested so far. NCDC also says, and I quote, it has learned major lessons in its bid to strengthen the country's health system to cope with other infectious diseases and, of course, future healthcare challenges. That's public health challenges. Kinsley.
Yeah, no question about that. What we saw was the entire world seeking to first understand the nature of this disease, quite different from other forms of viral infections that we had previously had to deal with as humanity, and which also brought in some, if you like, initial confusion as to how precisely to go about this. We saw various vaccines being developed, and ultimately we also saw vaccine nationalism. That is to say, the advanced world, having developed the vaccines, opted first to vaccinate their people fully before shipping out some of those vaccines to less developed countries, particularly for us here in Africa. And unfortunately, as we have seen from the tally of fatalities, the Northern Hemisphere has suffered some of the worst cases of deaths arising from the coronavirus, the US, for instance, and also in Europe, Italy, the UK, and Germany, among others.
Indeed, Kingsley, and we must not also forget the fear that was put into developing countries, the people of Africa really, about the death prediction, that will probably have will come up from COVID-19. A lot of people feared that Africa would have been the center of epicenter of it all, but surprisingly, that didn't happen.
And that's because there was a concern that the fragile healthcare systems of African countries might not be able to cope with the ravages of the disease, with the exception perhaps of South Africa, which witnessed huge numbers of infection as well as deaths. Elsewhere, the African continent, we didn't see those alarming numbers materialize. It's been a miracle, medical miracle,
indeed,
worthy of further research as to what happened. Although we had our scare moments, as it were. Kano, if you remember, at some point, Kano was recording unexplained deaths because grave diggers said they were working at rates much higher than they did previously. And then the federal government, through the health teams, moved into Kano, and they were able to stabilize the numbers. A number of persons have passed on, as we have recorded. Well over 3,000 persons have died, but nowhere near the doomsday prediction that Africa was said to be at the risk of. So that's our first topic, as we take a look at 2 years on, what lessons have we learned, and again to ask the question, are we dropping our guard? And assuming, because this is life, and once there's life, there are always challenges. Another virus comes around, how will humanity, and particularly for us in Nigeria, cope with that? We have a second topic, which has to do with the ongoing amendments of the Constitution. That will be the 5th alteration. The National Assembly has been busy working out those amendments. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. It will be interesting to hear some of the advocates of some of the clauses in the amendment. They'll be here to speak to the issues that will be raised today, particularly the issue that concerns gender. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. That clause was put down yesterday, and Nigerian women are not happy about it. You must have heard just a moment ago, the Minister of Women Affairs says, well, it is not the end of it all. So we will be looking at that also on today's edition of the program. And let's just quickly go over to the newsroom where Musbah Dan Wahab is waiting eagerly. Musbah, good to see you. And what's happening?
Well, we've got some news to tell the world. Hello, welcome to Venice on Good Morning Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari is in Nairobi, Kenya, ahead of activities marking the 50th anniversary of the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president was specially invited to participate at the hybrid event by his Kenyan counterpart, Uhuru Kenyatta. Meanwhile, before departing, President Muhammadu Buhari directed the nation's armed forces and naval security services to address with immediate effect all cases of security breaches, economic sabotage, and wanton destruction of lives and properties across the country. This was while declaring open the National Security Seminar organized by the Alumni Association of the National Defense College in collaboration with the Office of a National Security Advisor and the National Defense College.
Seriousness We have zero tolerance for kidnapping, especially of school children, and we shall deal with such outrages decisively.
And the Nigerian Armed Forces is renewing cooperation with the Egyptian military in order to boost combat efficiency. This came to the fore at a conference of military cooperation between armed forces of Nigeria and that of Egypt.
Strengthen the issue of intelligence sharing and special forces training in particular. And above all, we are hoping that it will afford us opportunity of finalizing the MOU.
A massive Russian convoy near Kiev as explosion destroyed government building in Ukraine's largest city, Kharkiv, and European Union Council and Commission meets Ukraine's request for aid. Meanwhile, the African Union has called for caution over the widespread report that Africans living in Ukraine had been blocked from leaving the country. This is coming after social media outrage across the continent showing instances where Africans were allegedly denied entry into the evacuation buses while some were blocked at border points by security personnel. Back in Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari has written to the Senate requesting the amendments of Electoral Act 2022 recently signed into law. In a letter to the legislative arm, the president explained that the Electoral Act 2022 no doubt will reposition Nigeria's electoral process for the better, but that Section 84, subsection 12 will amount to disenfranchisement of political appointees against their already provided constitutional rights.
That is ultra-vires the Constitution by way of importing blanket restriction and disqualification to serving political office holders of which they are constitutionally accorded protection.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Women Affairs and United Nations Women have reacted to failure of a bill seeking additional seats for women in state houses of assembly and federal lawmakers to get two-thirds majority.
I want to urge Nigerian women to remain resilient and strong, that despite what has happened today, it is not yet over. The struggle continues. We will not give up. We'll keep pushing, and we will strategize.
INEC has made available to political parties soft copies of a list of persons registered as voters in 2021. This is in compliance to Section 10 of Electoral Act 2022, which mandates INEC to present to political parties list of new voters within the first 60 days of each year. Meanwhile, following the release of timetable for the 2023 general elections, INEC has displayed the notice of election in all its offices nationwide. New guidelines for design and implementation of a homegrown school feeding program has been launched by the African Union Development Agency towards advancing the school feeding agenda for Africa. This was during the commemoration of the 7th Africa Day for School Feeding, organized by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development in Abuja.
The National Homegrown School Feeding Program has undoubtedly had a major impact on school children through a significant increase in school enrollment and attendance, along with a corresponding improvement in the nutrition and health status of beneficiary pupils, credited to the nutritious meal that is now made freely available to them at their respective schools.
That was the news. Just a bit of it. We'll bring you more in the course of the day. For now, we're taking a break, and Good Morning Nigeria will continue in just a moment with Claire and Kinsley.
The Nigerian aviation sector is rapidly growing with the construction of new international airport terminals in several regions of the country. The new Murtala Mohammed International Airport has an estimated passenger increase of 30 million annually and 15 million for Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Malam Aminu Kano International Airport is also expected to open new frontiers for the region with more travel capacity for the annual Hajj, while the new Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, avails more business opportunities connecting the industrial cities in the region to the world. These new terminals beat world-class standards with enabling infrastructure that aid air travel, tourism, and the eventual growth of the country's GDP.
Open up commerce and, of course, link us to international societies.
People from international community will come here to do business, and then that will bring in more revenue to the state.
Now, distances can be seamlessly covered as Nigeria keeps raising its bar to suit global infrastructure standards.
Everybody knows the secret to good cooking is that special ingredient. The mothers know it, but does this new generation know it? Let's find out. Mothers, daughters, are you ready? Yes! Let the cooking begin.
Erisco tomato paste.
Now we get home, now we get love,
now we get children.
We spice the world
with a meal so great and so healthy.
You know we've got your back. Oh, with Erisco, Rigico, Nagico.
Ladies and gentlemen, food is ready.
Food of love.
Tomato paste.
Hi, tomato paste. Good food for the body. Yum yum for the body.
Erisco Rigico and Nagico tomato paste is made by Erisco Foods Limited, feeding Africans with healthy foods.
Helen Paul!
Hello, madam. Would you like to join us on this mission?
Yes, but how?
Just one question for you. How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use regular detergent and bleach for washing and removing yellow stains. I have been using it for years.
Oh, madam. The regular detergents and bleach are used for washing clothes.
To disinfect your toilet properly, you need Harpic 10X. It is specially made for germs and stains remover. Harpic sticker formula settles on stains and gives 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergent and bleach.
Wow!
Finally, the hero of Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels. Leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news, or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency. Contemporary times require practical skills to remain competitive and relevant in your organization. Therefore, take advantage of NTA TV College Short Proficiency courses to sharpen your professional skills. Computer Appreciation for Media Practitioners. Date 21st February to 28th February 2022. 1 week. English Grammar and Pronunciation for Broadcasters. Date 1st March to 25th March. 4 weeks. Administrative Principles, Processes and Practices. Date 11th March to 31st March 2022. 4 weeks. Modern Trends in Broadcast Media Marketing. Date 14th March to 13th April 2022. 4 weeks. Basic Broadcast Accounting and Auditing. Date 4th April to 19th April 2022. 2 weeks. The course fee for the 1 week course is 100,000 naira per participant. The fee for the 2 week course is 150,000 naira, while the course fee for the 4 week course is 180,000 naira only, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTATV College, near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTATV College, training you to be the best you want to be.
Arise, O Nigerians. Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Let's talk a bit of business now. And the rights revolution in Nigeria, of course, is gaining ground as the CBN says that our milling capacity has risen to 3 million metric tons produced from over 68 integrated mills across the country, and that was in January this year. Let's hear more from Alika Okpanachi Arwa.
According to CBN, the policies of the federal government on agriculture appeared to be working, especially in terms of the number of emerging integrated rice mills and the multiplier effect on farmers' productivity, food availability, job creation, and poverty alleviation. The Apex Bank also disclosed that over 58 new integrated rice mills have been facilitated to give additional support to the existing tel mills in the country through various policies of the federal government in the last 7 years. The governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, pointed out that recently rice mills in Nigeria were fewer than 10 in 2015, with a combined annual capacity of less than 350 metric tons. He said the Anchor Borrowers program, which the CBN introduced in 2015, has had catalytic effect on rice cultivation, processing, and other value chain activities, adding that about 10 more integrated mills would be opened this year. Meanwhile, oil prices surged on Tuesday, driven by concerns over supply disruption because of Ukraine crisis and sanctions against Russia, while talks over coordinated global crude stocks release failed to calm fears of potential shortages. With business news, Alika Okpanachi Arwa.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
It's time to take a look at what's happening or trending in some of our national dailies on the newspaper review segment. Kingsley, do you want to start?
Well, the big story, of course, which is a lead in the 2 papers that we have, Leadership and the Nation, has to do with the resolutions yesterday from the National Assembly with respect to the ongoing amendment of the Constitution of 1999. So you have That's a lead story in the mid-section of the leadership newspaper, Constitution Review. That's the kicker for it. President and governors may go to jail for rejecting legislative summons. A number of writers there indicate some of the highlights, according to the paper, of the amendments passed by the legislature. National Assembly passes bill, rejects special seats for women, and votes against moving VAT to exclusive list. Approves financial autonomy for state legislature, judiciary, and local governments. Rejects pension for presiding officers of legislature, diaspora voting, and mayoral status for Abuja. NLC mobilizes states for local government autonomy approval. Insecurity hurting Southeast economy. That's according to some of the governors. And convention, the first crisis hits APC over imposition of candidates. 2023, Alaafin and Ooni moved to reconcile Aregbesola and Tinubu. You can see the photographs there of the two monarchs in the southwest with Rauf Aregbesola, who was the Minister of Interior. Nigeria needs governance dialogue for progress. And that's the other headline that you have on the front page of the leadership. The others, of course, relate to stories that are already very well known.
Okay, so let me quickly look at some of other stories trending on the front page of The Nation. And I'd like to start just a little above the nameplate. And it says, ASU has received 92 billion naira, says federal government. ASU has received 92 billion naira, says federal government, and Parley is still on strike, ongoing. Details of that story is on page 7. Buhari, Oyetola, Tinubu, Kalu eulogize Adeboye at 80. And President goes on 2 weeks medical vacation. That's on page 2. Vain customs agent meeting ending deadlock. So let me come down to the late story again. Senators, reps, no to bill seeking VAT for federal government. And as Kingsley indicated earlier, the list of how the lawmakers voted is also on the front page of this paper, that's The Nation. Now, commuters stranded, motorists groan as petrol scarcity bites harder. And this story, of course, is in Abuja. This story is in Abuja, and it continues on page 6. You can read all about it. The picture story this morning is on the Russia-Ukrainian war, and there you see Russian troops near Ukraine's capital. Major cities are said to have come under bombardment. Details of that on page 43. And just beneath that, Buhari turns down governor's plea to drop Adamu. That's President seeks to ex-Nasarawa governor and opposes plot to alter zoning. And just in between there, you have March 26th convention date unchanged. Okay, those are some of the stories. Kingsley, I think as explicit as the captions.
Absolutely, yes. As the headlines. The big story we said, of course, has to do with the Constitution amendment. And it's been a very busy period for members of the National Assembly. Last week, you recall, that we rounded off the whole issue about the amendment to the Electoral Act, which then gave us the Electoral Act 2022. But the President, of course, while giving his accent, did say that he would wish that the National Assembly amended Section 84, subsection 12 of the new Act. He's already sent that communication now to the National Assembly, which the Senate President also read yesterday. And it's a matter that has to do with political appointees and their participation in the process leading to elections. But the bigger story, of course, relates to the 68 bills that the National Assembly had to consider for purposes of amending the 1999 Constitution for a 5th time, because this is the 5th alteration that we'll be dealing with. And just to explain, because that's one issue that we are having a conversation around. The National Assembly, under the rules of the Constitution for amending itself, will pass those bills as they have. The Senate passed 49 out of the 68, and the two houses must agree The two chambers must agree on what they pass. And then the bills as passed will be transmitted to the 36 state houses of assembly. And 24 of them must also concur to each of those bills as passed. Where the number of state houses of assembly does not match the required 2/3. That's to say you have maybe 23 state houses of assembly passing a bill. It means that that proposed amendment collapses. And some of the highlights, of course, have been indicated. And once the state houses of assembly have passed or rejected the bills, then the final copy is transmitted to the president for its accent, and then we'll have the 5th alteration to the Constitution. In the past, particularly when there were many proposals to amend the Constitution, it often failed because it was drafted as a single bill, and then you had a number of clauses relating to different sections of the Constitution which ought to be amended. So once that one clause failed, then the entire bill for amending the Constitution also collapsed at that time. But the National Assembly has found a way around that, which is to say, prepare individual bills, so whichever fails, and then whichever passes also passes. Earlier you were talking about the defeat of the bill ensuring that was intended to ensure special seats for women, and I think that you could see the long faces of women in different parts of the country yesterday, how this came about. Because if you remember, the First Lady, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, was at the National Assembly along with some cabinet ministers to witness the conversations around the debates around the proposal for the amendments. And just yesterday as well, the wife of the Vice President was also at the National Assembly. But it's the prerogative of the National Assembly to vote the way they have done.
All right, Kingsley, and luckily that's our first topic this morning. We will be looking at that. Our guests are already right here in the studio, so let's quickly take a short break. When we come back, we introduce them.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
Hello, madam. Would you like to join us on this mission?
Yes, but how?
Just one question for you. How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use regular detergent and bleach for washing and removing yellow stains. I have been using it for years.
Oh, madam, the regular detergents and bleach are used for washing clothes.
To disinfect your toilet properly, you need Harpic 10X. It is specially made for germs and stains remover. Harpic sticker formula settles on stains and gives 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergent and bleach.
Wow!
Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we want a stable society before, during, and after the elections, what should you be saying to those that worship with you? All Sundays and all Fridays, you are saddled with the responsibility of bringing up good generations. It is therefore your duty to both man and God to ensure peace all the time, no matter about elections alone. People talk to people and people listen. Talk to your followers. Make them listen to ensure peaceful 2023 elections. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
The House
housing solution we have developed is a multifaceted one. First, we have tried to lead a program to build what we think will be an acceptable and hopefully affordable housing type based on surveys we did in 2015, 2016, and construction that started in 2017. And that's going on in 34 states as the National Housing Program.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
COVID-19, that is the black swan of the century, has actually hit the whole world very hard, even the strongest of economies, and Nigeria was not spared. But due to the proactive stance and steps that the President has taken, we've been able to come out quickly. The President has consistently said we must invest in infrastructure, even as we're investing in human capital, that we must invest in infrastructure, because at the end of the day, that is what will bring about a sustainable economic growth. So the President has given us our directive. He has said you must make sure you pay salaries and pay pensions, but you also make sure that the critical projects of roads, railway, airports, bridges, major infrastructure that are meant to drive the growth of the economy, that we consistently invest in them, even if we have to continue to borrow to do so.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, we have two topics for conversation this morning. One, of course, is on 2 years of COVID-19 in Nigeria, lessons learned and others. But the first that we're going to be dealing with is the ongoing process in getting the fifth alteration to the 1999 Constitution. We have two guests with us here in the studio. Cynthia Mbamalu, she's Program Director of IAGA Africa and a regular guest in Good Morning Nigeria. Cynthia, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Okay. And we also have joining us via Zoom, Professor Muhammad Kabir Isa, a Professor of Governance in the Department of Local Government and Development Studies, Faculty of Administration, Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Professor Isa, also another regular guest of Good Morning Nigeria, delighted to have you on the program.
Good morning, Nigeria. It's a pleasure to be back on Good Morning Nigeria.
Okay, let's begin the conversation with you, Professor Isa. We saw the National Assembly yesterday deal with a slate of bills to amend the Constitution. Senate passed 49 of them. One, of course, which touches on the independence of the local government system, of which, of course, you are an expert. But give us your overview of this whole exercise in getting the fifth alteration through the assembly process.
Thank you very much. Basically, if you look back into history, there have been, in the past National Assembly, there have been several attempts to amend the Constitution. Way back, I think, in 2007, 8, 9, and thereabout. There have been about 3 attempts to amend the Constitution in a remarkable, very significant way. However, the processes often get scuttled at the state houses of assembly. In fact, the last but one, it was the State House of Assembly that scuttled the entire processes. And in every attempt to amend significantly the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we have a State House of Assemblies, that do not understand the yearnings and the aspirations of Nigerians. And unfortunately, the caliber of people we have at the State House of Assemblies leave a lot to be desired in terms of their perceptions, in terms of their understanding, and in terms of, the way they reason. And it has a lot to do with the type of people and the quality of people we vote into the State House of Assembly. I did a study for Chatham House in 2016 on the political underdevelopment of the Northeastern state. And we discovered that in all the states of the Northeast, the states' houses of assembly are rubber stamps houses of assembly. They barely understood what their role are in terms of making laws and making provisions for the development of their various communities and societies that they represent at the State House of Assembly. So it's unfortunate that the bulk of the basis of our political underdevelopment is linked to the State House of Assembly, and the political parties. You know, we don't have political parties. What we have in Nigeria are political associations, a coalition of interest without ideology, without principle, without focus, and without direction. So it's unfortunate that our political parties throw up candidates that are going there to be rubber stamps. And the processes through which we recruit actors to go into the State House of Assembly is questionable. And I think this should be the subject of even constitutional amendment, that the political parties come up with recruitment processes, because the elites who control political parties are not interested in the quality of people who go, particularly at the local government level and at the State House of Assemblies, because they want people that they can control, they can manipulate, while they go to the center and determine what happens at the center. You know, everything about this constitutional process is laudable, is, you know, something to be reckoned with, is something to be cherished. However, like you rightly observe, our problem and challenge of this constitutional process is that it will be scuttled, it will be truncated, it will be usurped and hijacked at the State House of Assembly. And I can bet you that we are not likely to get that to third at the State House of Assemblies. And that's my take on the entire process of the constitutional amendment. It's unfortunate that our political parties do not have a good understanding of what they are supposed to do. You can't compare political parties today and political parties in the between 79 and 80s, because you can talk about MPN, you know the direction of MPN, you know the ideological leaning of MPN. When you look at UPN, between UPN and MPN, you can tell that UPN is a social democratic party, while the MPN is a Republican party. PRP, for example, you can tell that PRP is a people's party. It's like a socialist-oriented party. MPP, you can tell the direction, and so on. But when you look at our APC, you look at PDP, you look at what you have today, it's a coalition of political groups, an association, but they are not political parties. In fact, they do not measure with all the indices and indicators of political party anywhere in the world. So people come in and brandish all sorts of things. We don't have political parties. I accept we have political association made up of political groups, a coalition of interest, but not people who are there to champion the interests of Nigeria.
Okay, Professor Issa, thank you. Thank you. We just put you on hold for a while and return to you. Let's come back to the studio. Cynthia is here with us. Cynthia, I'd like for you to look at how the lawmakers voted. 68 of those bills. And in looking at how they voted, I want you to look at also the content of the bills, you know, vis-a-vis relevance to our democratic progress.
Yeah, very important conversation. And I think I liked the conversation from Prof when he talked about parties. Our parties do not necessarily reflect ideologies. Why? Members of the National Assembly represent the parties, and major representation is from the All Progressive Congress and the People's Democratic Party. So you would expect that proposals that are either progressive in nature or promote democracy will receive some level of consideration. And we don't see that totally. We had some wins, but we had major fails also. What were some of those wins? At least conversation around universal basic education, proposing that the right to primary education would become a fundamental right. So moving into Chapter 4 of the Constitution to make it a fundamental right for all children. That is an important provision that was passed. Conversation around local government autonomy also, both financial autonomy and administrative autonomy were also important provisions that were passed, because consistently we've talked about the need to ensure an independent autonomous local government as a tier of government. And we already had conversation this morning around the state assemblies being appendages of government government. Local government was even worse, and because almost they did not exist unless the governors wanted them to exist. So it's an important proposal that made it in. However, if you look at the several other proposals that were presented, issues around gender, for instance, those were important bills that did not receive the kinds of support that was expected. As simple as citizenship, and I always talk about citizenship. Why was citizenship bill very important? Because the Constitution in our preamble already says that we, the people, will resolve that that our Constitution would promote principles of freedom, equality, and justice. It's clearly stated in the Constitution. But if you go to the rights of citizenship, only Nigerian men can confer citizenship to foreign wives. What this means is that women and men are not seen as equal citizens, because if only one sex can confer to their foreign partners, it means the other section, which are the women, why can't they confer citizenship to their foreign partners? And this is a provision that they voted against, because we wanted to level it up to ensure that as long as you're a citizen, if you marry a foreign partner, as you have in other countries, that partner can have citizenship. So conversation around also legislative representation. Now, why was this important? We needed to have a proposal to create seats for women because of the decline in women representation. And democracy is about representation, is about inclusion. But consistently, we've seen the processes of elections, from the party primaries to elections. Women contest, but they lose out. Even from convention, women contest for executive offices in parties, but they lose out. You only have maybe the women leader. Those are the positions you have reserved for at the party level. So in government and party level, you don't see inclusion. And we were expecting that at least a party like the APC that has majority, or the PDP that has majority members, that these are proposals they would adopt, because their constitution commits to promoting equality and women inclusion. If you read the constitution of these two parties, actually. So, but we saw the way they voted against the bill for women representation in the legislative houses, at the National and State Assembly. Let us bear in mind that this bill was the only bill that would have ensured that Nigeria would have assemblies with at least 3 women. Currently in Nigeria, 15 states or 36 states do not have female lawmakers. So there are 15 state assemblies where there is no woman as a lawmaker. And we think that is progress. In the 21st century, 23 years of democracy this year, that is problematic. But now this bill has failed. Go to appointive offices also. It did not make it. But interestingly, independent candidacy made it. However, we don't know how that would fare at the state level, because at least what independent candidacy does is because we know we have a faulty political party system, individuals with capacity and competence who do not connect with any of these parties can run as independents. That way, you can also have better options for young people, even for women, for PWDs, for people with capacity to contest for office. So that also was an important provision that made it at the voting yesterday.
I didn't want to, sorry, because I didn't want to interrupt you. Actually, I didn't also want you to take on the issue of the gender now. I wanted us to quickly exhaust, the other bills, but fair enough. Enlighten me about the citizenship, and how it affects spouses from other countries, knowing very well that our system here is, male gender friendly. It's, patriarchal.
Yeah, so the idea for citizenship, why was that very important? We're not saying that a lot of Nigerian men want to marry foreign husbands, for instance, but it's the spirit behind that provision, that citizenship should be a right that every Nigerian enjoys. So if you're entitled to things as citizens, everyone should be entitled to that. So what this provision does, Section 26 of the Constitution, what it does is says only women married to citizens can become citizens if they by registration. So there are specific provisions for you to achieve to become a citizen by registration if you marry a Nigerian man. So you have that option, which is why you have a lot of Nigerian men who actually have foreign wives who after a period of time become citizens. But for women, we don't have that right. So what that section basically does is says, women, you're not citizen enough. to confer citizenship to your foreign spouse. What it means is, if for women who marry foreign husbands, no matter how well their husbands have lived with them, no matter how much tax they've paid, how well behaved they are, they cannot become citizens.
Your husband's place.
That is another country, but we want to be Nigerians.
Anyway, you're talking about equity.
We are talking about being Nigerian. Being Nigerian is the basic of our citizenship. Do you want Nigerian women to leave the country to become citizens of other countries? That's the question here. We want to be Nigerian citizens.
Well, Cynthia, thank you very much for your explanation. And just to indicate, because when lawmakers are voting, they don't necessarily state the reason why they are voting.
Mm-hmm.
They may have done their prior research, and then, of course, you have all kinds of influences, cultural and otherwise. There were a number of African countries that had similar rules, if you like, of citizenship. In Zimbabwe, for instance, in the past, I'm not sure what the new constitutional arrangements are. If you were a lady, a female Zimbabwean, married to a foreigner, your foreign spouse didn't have the right to Zimbabwean citizenship. That was in Zimbabwe. But you were explaining the exclusion of women from the elective process. That's to say, the special seats that were designed or proposed, if you like, for women. And we had a conversation around that subject matter some time ago. And it seemed as if, yes, fine proposal to make, but at a time when the country was also concerned about the cost of governance, it was clear that if you implemented that special seats for women, which would have meant, at the way it was couched, you would have enlarged the size first of the Senate, and then enlarged the size of the House of Reps, enlarged the size of the state Houses of Assembly. Some of the lawmakers might have felt, hey, listen, we can't deal with this at the moment. Isn't there some compensation, therefore, through the independent candidacy that they have now voted for?
Well, with all the consultations, the issue of cost was not an issue. In fact, this was the most welcomed bill from our engagement in the constitutional review process from every assembly. Why? Because they had felt this bill did not threaten their seats. And if you realize, in the House of Reps, this bill had the Speaker as the co-sponsor, and 85 members sponsored this bill, because this was one bill that received a lot of affirmative support at the passing the process. So it was not a question. And on budget, an analysis was done, and the cost that it would have incurred was less than 1% of the 2021 budget. And if you know, 2021 budget is less than the current budget for this year. And in fact, if you cut out the waste and all the leakages in the budget, it was going to fit in. We had done a lot of analysis, and that was why it was welcomed. So there were arguments for that. But yes, there's an opportunity in independent candidacy. But we know the last assembly, the 8th assembly, it passed at the national, but also did not make it to the state. So while we have an opportunity there, independent candidacy does not necessarily guarantee that women would win. It gives women opportunities. It may be a compensation, but it does not put Nigeria in the global space as a country that is committed to promoting women inclusion, with all the instruments to sign on to, and with all the commitments from the President, the Senate President, the Speaker, and all the members of the House, especially in this month of March, which is the month of the women. So it was like National Assembly said no to women in the Women's Month. I don't know what else is as loud as that. And I think it's important that Nigerian women reunite and come back together, because there's a protest today. And we want National Assembly to understand that we do not appreciate taking for granted, because during elections, you need our votes. During elections, women organize campaign. Women are the reason a lot of lawmakers make it back to the National Assembly. So because of that, we want them to understand that you don't keep saying no to women every assembly. When will you say yes to Nigerian women?
They tell you these things are not done based on sentiments, gender sentiments or gender,
It's democratic.
It has to be scientific. You must, know what is at risk and what is on the table. So let me ask, maybe Professor Kabiru Issa will probably give us an insight into why, when it comes to gender bills, issues about gender, granting special seats or upping female representation in the National Assembly, it becomes an issue. Is there anything that we really do not understand, despite all the consultations and advocacies and affirmative response that Cynthia says, was received at the preliminary stages? So what do you think happened at the National Assembly?
Thank you once more. I think we are not looking at the problem from the root of the problem, really. The National Assembly makes laws, and the National Assembly cannot be making laws for every little problem. Really, the problem is from the political parties. The National Assembly can make laws for affirmative action that political parties, because members of the National Assembly are supposed to be recruited from a political party. So political parties are the ones to implement affirmative action. So we can make a law, and this is why the problem of that law keeps reoccurring. When you insist that, certain seats in the National Assembly must be, specifically designated for women of a particular category of people. Rather, as a principle, the National Assembly can make laws that, look, the National Assembly in Nigeria is passing this law in Nigeria that at every level of government, there must be affirmative action. For example, we talk about quota system. There is no law that says that quota system must be distributed like this or in this pattern. But the law insists that there must be quota in every distribution of offices. Likewise, we can have a law that spells out that there must be affirmative action at every level and stage of government. But, members of the National Assembly come to the National Assembly through political parties. They are the vehicles for the proper implementation of affirmative action. Now, women are a larger chunk of the voting bloc. They must use their power. They must use their bloc. Men don't vote like women do. The bulk of voters are women. So women must use their power to get what they want, because power does not come on a platter of gold. It does not come from the house. It comes from affirmative action, from group, from association, from bloc movement. They must form a movement and demand that political parties must field female candidates in their candidature for election at certain level. So this is where the problem lies. I feel it's the political parties. They are playing the ostrich by pushing the problem to the National Assembly. It's just like saying that we have the National Assembly making laws for how parties elect. National Assembly can make general laws, not specific laws. I personally do not see why National Assembly should dictate to how political parties conduct their elections, conduct their affairs. It is a matter of principle for the political parties. So we must insist that political parties must do things in certain ways. After all, if you look at what are the roles of political parties in democratic society, our political parties do not fit in anywhere. They do not stand the test of time. They do not even measure in any way, because in a democratic society, there are no imposition. There are no godfatherism. All those negative drawbacks that are factors of underdevelopment are hallmarks of our political parties and the party existence in Nigeria. So we don't have political parties. What we have is political association. And therefore, they cannot...
Professor Issa, let me pause you there and throw this into the conversation. In jurisprudence, when you're looking at the organic nature of laws, laws are more efficacious when they grow from the mores and habits and culture of a people, rather than seeking to transplant or impose a law. Yes, you can, in deserving instances, impose a law as an instrument, to engineer social change. But persons would argue that the conservative nature of our society, and therefore some of the disposition you saw in the course of the voting, might have brought this about. We were making some progress. Let's not make any mistake about it. Over the past 10 years or more, we've had women who have been in charge of the Nigerian economy as finance ministers. There was a time you could count no fewer than 8 or 10 women who were in cabinet. You also had quite a sizable number in the National Assembly and in some state houses of assembly. What went wrong? Was it a matter of not having the piece of legislation, or women just were pushed to the sidelines? Can we get the political parties on their own? Because we discussed this after the APC Women Conference, and they said at their convention, which is coming up later this month, they have a slate of demands to make. So is it therefore advisable to say, okay, let this grow from the habits and practices of political parties, and before you know it, it then becomes almost the new normal to say, look, you must have women. And after a while, if you need to codify it, you go to the Constitution. Cynthia.
Well, let's understand that you're right. Sometimes laws, it's more effective when it's organic. However, there's also the conventional laws as instruments of social engineering. Why? Because if you always wait for the people to have a consensus on issues, you may not have specific legislation. It's almost like abolition of things as simple as the killing of twins years back. If we waited for a culture as called, not just that, FGM, all the things we fight against that are horrible. If you were waiting for the culture of the people, it would have taken a longer time, but you needed to make a law to enforce it. Why? Because when you make a law, it creates legal mandate. And that is why this for women conversation is important. So let's think about appointments. You were right. Once upon a time, we almost had 30% women, almost 30% in the cabinet. If you remember that, as far back as before 2015, even 2011, yeah. However, these numbers dropped this time around. Why? Because there was no law to mandate it. So only when there's political will that you see improvement.
Cynthia, I have to cut to you. I'm sorry. I know you mentioned earlier on that there is a peaceful protest by women. So we'll just allow you, and I'm sure that we'll return to this topic, to discuss it at more elaborate form. Thank you very much, Cynthia Mbamalu, for coming. And we'd also like to appreciate Mohammed Kabir Isa. Professor, thank you very much. The points you raised are very germane, very vital, and I'm sure Cynthia also has taken note of some of those few things. Thank you very much, and do have a good day.
It's a pleasure being with you.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away. We'll be right back with our second topic. It's 2 years of COVID-19 in Nigeria. What have we learned, and what is the future of public health? Just in a moment.
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all, to look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within, and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
So, welcome back. If you've just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and it's live on the network service. We told you February 27 made it 2 years when Nigeria received coronavirus via the Italian who landed at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos, went to Ogun State and left bits and bits of the virus. And then, of course, gradually it spread, and then into community spread. It's 2 years now. We have vaccines. Some of us have taken the first dose, second dose, booster doses, but we are still, conscious or concerned about the virus, and we are being warned that it is not over yet. But what have we learned? Is it a clean bill of health? Where are we going from here? Let's listen to this backgrounder quickly put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
News about coronavirus was first heard in faraway China in December 2019. It was later spread as the purveyors of such news soon discovered it was mutations found expression in different modes of transmission in other countries and continents in America, Europe and Africa the following year. During this time, Nigeria had put up preventive structures and measures as precautions, especially for inbound travelers, to ward off recording any case, as all got weary of what the virus was all about. However, on the 27th February 2020, Nigeria recorded the first case of COVID-19 in Lagos. The number of cases rose to different levels, thinned considerably at a point and shot up, giving rise in the different parameters in the state's monitoring methods. Still, the worries and fears were on for many, knowing well the impact and effects of the virus on human lives and mobility, the mutating ability and nature to break down the immunity of its host and bring to death. For almost a year, the virus tagged a public health emergency of international concern by the World Health Organization operated freely as there was no known vaccine, drug and antivirus produced to tame it, except for the simple pharmaceutical protocols of hygiene, washing of hands, keeping suitable distance with others, to the use of alcohol-based hand sanitizer, amongst others. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, became the lead agency for the multi-sectoral coronavirus preparedness group, aside a presidential task force led by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, to champion the sensitization of Nigerians and create necessary awareness on the dreaded disease and the federal government's efforts at containing it. The country's health system was seriously affected as many victims were hospitalized, resulting to the straining of hospital beds, though many died, including the first-line attendants, the medical doctors, who had contact with the patients. Nigerian government, on its part, took full responsibility of protecting its citizens by mandating the social distance policy, which includes 50% gathering at every point, especially at religious gatherings, vehicles, amongst others. There was also the lockdown, which was later relaxed. Within these 2 years of the ravaging virus, some Nigerians talked about some local concoctions with the capability of fighting the virus, but the Ministry of Health debunked it, saying they aren't effective enough to kill the virus. There was a little breakthrough when the anti-COVID-19 vaccines were produced, which was said to have over 90% efficiency, but still with the basic health precautions being activated. Throughout the pandemic period, Nigeria had experienced 4 different waves of the virus and has overcome. As at the end of February 2022, less than 50 new cases were recorded daily. These low records could be attributed to efforts of the government's rolled out measures of vaccination, which has yielded good results of protecting the citizens. So far, how can the government's approach against COVID-19 be assessed? What more can be done to ensure the end of the virus? These are some questions guests already seated in the studio will be answering shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that backgrounder. Dr. Ifedayo Adetifa joins us for this conversation and is joining us via Zoom. He's the Director General, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC. If we can have Dr. Ifedayo Adetifa, he's joining us via Zoom. And of course, that's Dr. Ifedayo Adetifa, DG, Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Adetifa.
Thank you for having me, Claire. Good morning.
Yeah. Also joining us via Zoom is Dr. Vivian Kwage, and she's head of Infectious Diseases Unit, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Gwagwalada. She's also joining us via Zoom. I hope she can hear us. Dr. Kwage, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll just get to you in a short while. Let me quickly introduce the guests we have here in the studio. Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed is Head Technical Secretariat, Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. And Dr. Basi Oposen is here again. Of course, we saw him in our last conversation. Director, Disease Control and Immunization, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Thank you very much, as always.
Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, Dr. Adetifa, we're starting straight off with you. Let us know, it's 2 years, and the NCDC has been in the forefront of, trying to steer this pandemic away from us. Give us a sense of, what's the situation now, 2 years after?
Well, I think it's important to remind us that the COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented. It has and continues to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. Unlike most of the outbreaks that we're used to, this was not just a problem for health, but it also significantly affected livelihoods, economy, including things like travel and social interactions. The earlier background material talked about lockdowns. I don't think anybody around in this lifetime has experienced lockdowns on the account of a disease outbreak other than usually what you typically experience with security situations. So given that description, it definitely required a major redirection of our public health resources, which for the first time in my lifetime at least was focused on fighting one disease, and one disease that we knew very little about at the beginning. But there were a few positive things. It's that while the pandemic provided the opportunity for us to build as we responded to it, because it was clear that if the world, including Nigeria, had been better prepared for this pandemic, maybe the trajectory would have been different. So it highlighted the need for us to all invest more in pandemic preparedness. And the investment in pandemic preparedness as part of this response is one area where I think we have made significant gains, and the country has done well relative to the scenario that we had before. So right now, we're in a good place, is what I would imagine, I would say. And that's because we've got vaccines, we've got diagnostics, we have public health safety measures, and we know that all of these work. Of course, the big factor to consider is whether people will adopt or adhere to these measures. And all of these measures work regardless of which SARS-CoV-2 variant is circulating. Do we know whether we have come to the end of coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic? We do not know. This virus is new. We have managed to gain a lot of knowledge about it in the last 2 years, but we do not know everything about it. We may yet be surprised by another variant that may have immune escape mechanisms or be more virulent. We hope not, but the attitude as part of preparedness is that we prepare for the worst and we hope for the best. Back to you, Claire.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adetifa, there for your opening comments. Let's also bring in Dr. Vivian Kwahe into the conversation. She's of the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital in Gwagwalada. Dr. Vivian, of course, we can see you there on the right side of the screen. At the height of the pandemic, we had you as our guest, often remotely, as we are doing on this occasion, discussing with us. And I do remember that at some point, you and your team had spent about 6 weeks at around your hospital without leaving, without going to be with members of your families. Could you just summarize for us what the experience was like or has been like in dealing with this very unusual pandemic, and your hospital being, as it were, a major center in handling some of the cases?
Thank you very much for having me once more. Just like Dr. Adetifa has mentioned, it's once in a lifetime experience for everybody, even for us here at the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, dealing with an unprecedented infection. I really thank God for the privilege of being one of the response, being part of the response team to COVID-19 in management in Nigeria. And it's an experience that I believe would impact positively on my career as an infectious disease physician. And it came with a lot of challenges. The onset of the pandemic, the facilities were being prepared to receive the patients, equipment were being brought in, consumables were being purchased, were being moved into the facility. As a doctor, one of the questions I asked myself was, if I'm face to face with a patient that has COVID-19, what will I do? I mean, there was no protocol anywhere. WHO had not come up with any protocol for management of patients with COVID-19. I couldn't find anything in any textbook on how to manage a patient on COVID-19. I remember sitting down in our call duty room, and I picked a piece of paper and called my colleagues. Let's come up with a protocol. I mean, that was a major challenge. Let's come up with a protocol on how to manage this patient. When we are face to face with a patient, what should we do? What kind of contact should we have? Taking into consideration the fact that we're dealing with an infectious disease, yes, we want to render help, but we also need to protect ourselves. So how much contact should we have with the patient? What kind of physical examination should we carry out on a patient that has to bring up a protocol or a guideline on how to manage a patient with COVID-19. And we did that also for the nurses. As a nurse and with a patient that has COVID, that was done, the next challenge we faced was that of the fear of being infected, with this virus. That fear was quite palpable as everybody else was, running away from COVID-19 patients, and we had to manage these cases, so we were afraid of being infected. We didn't know what to do. Yes, we were given the protective equipment, we had the gloves, we had the face masks, we had the PPEs, but then we were seeing healthcare workers in Europe, in the US, with all those equipments being infected and even dying from the virus. So it became apparent that, these equipments or these protective gears did not confer 100% protection against the virus. So, being a Christian, I didn't know what to do, but to go back to the Bible. And I remember writing down Psalm 91, and then reading it out to myself every day before going to the isolation center. Reading out Psalm 91 every day before going into the isolation center to manage these patients. And I remember trying to, preach the same gospel to my colleagues. Of course, it's a matter of faith, and we all have different faiths, and people handle it in their own ways, but we all looked for a way to manage this fear of being infected by the virus. And then we had the challenge of stigma, which was very, very palpable. Nobody wanted to even go close to us. It was so funny, because even our own colleagues, were stigmatizing us, and our family members were also stigmatizing us. And that's the reason why we couldn't go home, at least for like the first 6 weeks of, working in the isolation center. I remember our medical director had to get a place for us, a hotel opposite the hospital where we stayed for a period of for about 6 weeks, because we couldn't go home. Our neighbors, our family members were afraid of getting close to us, because of fear of this deadly virus that we had. In terms of materials to work with, we didn't have much challenge in that area, thanks to the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, thanks to the NNPC, the Federal Ministry of Health, the Mainstream Energy Solution, and many organizations and groups and individuals that came to our help. They brought in a lot of consumables, that helped us. And I don't remember at any point in time lacking any equipment to work with. I know it's not the same thing with people working in other centers in Nigeria. They must have faced some challenges of lack of materials at one point in time, but that was not our experience here at the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital. And then we had the challenge of, burnt out, fatigue, exhaustion, particularly with the second wave and the third wave, because we saw so many patients, so many sick people. At one point in time, we had over 40 patients on admission, taking care of these people, seeing people dying every day. It was a whole lot. It was a whole lot to deal with. And by and large, I would say that it has been a wonderful experience, very challenging, but very wonderful. And I would cherish this feeling. I would cherish all that I have learned from this pandemic for the rest of my life.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Vivian. Maybe you have your memoirs, ultimately, let's say, memoirs on coronavirus, or my COVID-19 memoirs. Thank you. But let's bring in Dr. Adetifa one more time. That's the DG of NCDC. Obviously, I mean, it will take quite some time to review some of the lessons that we have learned from the relatively fragile healthcare system that we had to an explosion, if you like, in testing facilities, laboratories, and so on and so forth, and the various lessons that we have all learned. But two things that I would like you to tell us, that's our viewers now. What are the numbers? There were complaints that, one, we were not testing enough, and which is why the numbers tended to be low. How many Nigerians got infected from those? How did we escape the doomsday prediction that Africa including Nigeria, of course, was going to be a graveyard for victims of COVID-19?
There's a lot to unpack in those questions, Kingsley. Let's start with the second part, which is how did we escape the doomsday prediction? I think the summary answer is we do not know. Okay, but we think that there are a few things that have contributed to that. Of course, there's the demographics, which is the population structure in Africa, which is much younger. I think what is clear in terms of the risk factors for adverse outcomes for COVID disease, whether you're in the north or in the southern part of the world, there are some shared risk factors, and age is one of them. So even in Nigeria, for the number of deaths that we have had, sadly, most of those deaths have been in the elderly, have been in people with comorbidities and the like. So we've got those shared risk factors. It just seems like compared to many populations in many countries in the West, we do not have such a large population of people like that in our demographic structure. Our country's populations are much younger, not like, the example in Italy and Spain, where almost 20% of the population is above 65 or above 70, depending where you put the cutoff. So that's one thing. In terms of the lessons learned, obviously, I think the world in general realized that we were poorly prepared for this pandemic, despite the fact that for years we have been talking about pandemic preparedness. But the case in Nigeria and many countries in Africa was that, yes, the states of preparedness and the ability to respond to these types of conditions, we were badly unprepared. But with, I think the good thing is that we rose up to the challenge as quickly as we could. In fact, before the first case was identified in the country, the NCDC already had, and partners already had a preparedness plan, already had an action plan in place, which was costed and which the government and other partners had already started to implement. But obviously, the scenario is such that you are caught in a storm where you have no house. At the same time, you had to build a house to protect yourself from the storm. That's the scenario where we found ourselves. So that's a very challenging situation to be. But as you said, we went from 3 laboratories with molecular diagnostic capacity to a full network of laboratories across the country. The country invested in treatment centers, in isolation centers, in intensive care units, in laboratory capacity. And I think what these, although not perfect, these actually mean that we're in a better place now compared to 2 years ago at the beginning of this pandemic. And we need to remember that it is a flu pandemic that was being expected, not a coronavirus pandemic. In fact, this is the first time in human history that a coronavirus has been responsible for a pandemic. So we need to keep in mind that we still may have a flu pandemic, and therefore the work is not done. In terms of to develop tests to identify these conditions, this particular pathogen, and to validate and do all of that, that took a bit of time, but that also meant that because we couldn't do that ourselves, we were dependent on other people to do that. But through the work of the African CDC and the African Society for Laboratory Medicine, testing was quickly made available on the continent and ramped up. But in terms of our testing per capita, or per 100,000 population, we did not manage to reach the desired levels. However, we have been able to test consistently a steady number, such that that number was enough to signal to us any changes in the trends or in the patterns of the disease, even without reaching the desirable levels of testing. The other thing to remember is that most cases, even in places where testing was really high per capita, because a significant proportion of people infected with SARS-CoV-2 are completely asymptomatic, the disease estimates were still significantly underestimated. And we know that even in Nigeria from our serology studies, this is studies where we take blood samples from people to look for antibodies that have been developed in response to exposure to this virus. And we know that depending on what time point you look at, a lot more Nigerians had come across this virus and developed antibodies to it than are represented in the test numbers. And a lot of these Nigerians, when you ask them, have zero recollection of being sick or being ill. So that also doesn't help the situation. But the lesson learned is, well, we can ramp up testing. Should we have a pathogen that requires, that leads to a lot more cases and burden on the healthcare sector, we will need to be able to test at a much higher level than we did from COVID. This is one of the lessons that I learned. I'm sure you will ask me plans going forward, but there are other lessons learned that we will need to talk about, and we will need you and others to hold everybody accountable to make sure that we just don't go to sleep when we think COVID has gone and then wait for the next fire outbreak before we start responding. Back to you, Kingston.
All right, Dr. Adetifa, thank you. Just before we let both of you go, I'd just like to hear the perspective of Dr. Vivian Kwange on the behavior of Nigerians now, 2 years on, in terms of compliance with the non-pharmaceutical and pharmaceutical rules and regulations.
Hello, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, for now, many people think that COVID is gone. In fact, even during the heat of the pandemic, many people didn't even believe that it even existed in the first place. I remember somebody calling me and asking me why I had not attended a meeting. And I told her, I've been at the isolation center. I'm working in the isolation center. She said, what are you doing there? I said, we are managing COVID cases. She said, COVID in Nigeria? Is there COVID in Nigeria? So many people didn't even believe that the disease even existed in the first place. And so, of course, they didn't comply with all the measures that have been put in place, i.e. putting on face masks, social distancing, and all that. And now that the number of cases have actually gone down significantly, people have thrown caution to the wind, and you see people in large gatherings and nobody is putting on any face masks at all. In the marketplaces, in our churches and the mosque, I don't see anyone except in public places where people still put on face masks and they observe these protocols that have been put in place. Nobody is doing anything. So I think we still need to continue to educate the people. I don't think COVID is over yet. We cannot throw caution to the wind so soon, and we still need to continue to educate people to continue to adhere to these measures until I think we receive an official, maybe official notice from WHO that the pandemic is over before we can let loose our guard. Thank you.
Vivian Kwange, Head of Infectious Diseases Unit, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Gwagwalada. I'd like to thank you and thank God for your life as well as those of your colleagues. And thank you very much once again for all the good work that you have done. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let me also appreciate Dr. Ifedayo Adetifa, the DG of the NCDC, also again for your contributions to our program.
Thank you very much, Claire.
All right, so we'll take a short break. We'll come back.
Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. to upscale its road network. The construction of a 1.6-kilometer long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha Bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
Security analyst. All right, that's was caught off guard there. We just tried to make, if you like, a checklist of some prominent Nigerians, you know, who succumbed to COVID-19. At the time, people were engaged in denial. I mean, there are prominent persons. I doubt if there's any Nigerian today who doesn't know one prominent Nigerian that succumbed to COVID-19. Back to the studios, Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, head of the Technical Secretariat of the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Well, we're doing, if you like, now like a post-mortem, 2 years of COVID-19 in Nigeria. But strictly speaking, can we discuss COVID-19 in the past tense or in the present tense or in the present continuous tense?
This is a grammar lesson. Well, I think looking at the totality of the situation, I think we can refer to some things in the past, and we can certainly discuss the things that are happening currently, and we also have the opportunity to view it in the future. Looking at the past, we'll talk about, you know, when the epidemic started. Initially, it just a faraway land, you know, from Africa. But within a short period of time, you know, the disease has spread through Europe, you know, and to all parts of the world. So we can look at it from that perspective to say that, yes, when it started, we didn't know much. When it started, there were no drugs. And as Dr. Vivian mentioned, even there were no guidelines. There were no vaccines. The health community didn't know exactly what to do. We have a general idea about prevention, what you need to do to protect yourself, the information you need to provide to the public, but we did not have any definitive knowledge about how the disease was, the course the disease was going to take. So that is it. Currently, yes, COVID-19 is a reality, and we've seen how it has devastated our health system. We've seen how it overwhelmed some of the health systems in other parts of the country. We have seen how partnership, collaborations and efforts from various sectors of government have been brought to bear on the disease, and we know that all these measures have worked. And currently, yes, we're beginning to see a marked decline in the number of cases. Globally, we tend to understand much better the epidemiology of the disease. And we're now looking into the future to look at what does the world need to do. We know that geographic boundaries are just arbitrary. They are not physical boundaries. And the disease in one part of the world can actually be in another part of the world within a short period of time. We also understand that our collective will to be able to fight diseases everywhere is what will help guarantee the safety of public health globally. We know that global health security, looking at our total biosecurity, is important, and therefore it's important for us to design programs, public health programs, that will safeguard individuals, will safeguard families, communities, and will safeguard nations as well. We need to take into cognizance, our ability to manage, the data we are getting from testing, the DNA testing that is being done. You had Dr. Adetifa mentioned that we moved from 3 laboratories now to over 120 laboratories in the country. And so we're generating a lot of data. We need to open up our research frontiers. We need to make sure that we improve our capability for production of vaccines, because this is going to be a long haul. In the end, collaboration between different countries is very important, and we need to establish that framework such that all countries would be able to move together and make sure that we are our brother's keepers. If you find an epidemic in one point of place, it's good to ensure that it is controlled before it spreads to other parts of the world. So I think in summary, this is what I will say regarding past, present, and also the future.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. Let's bring in Dr. Pusa here. I have 2 questions. I'll try to make them as concise as possible. The first one is, you heard Dr. Kwangi. He says that it's like Nigerians are letting down their guards. Would it be that the health authorities in charge of sensitization are also letting down their guards? That's one. And 2, the doom prediction was probably based on maybe the health, capacity of our health systems, and which was described as weak. In the event of any outbreak of such, because he says we don't know, the next phase of, is our health system now, has it been strengthened? Is it better than before?
Okay, I think I will start from this way, right from when we were young till today, and we'll continue to say it. Prevention is better than cure. Easier, cheaper. Now, when you look at the COVID pandemic itself, what is responsible for letting down the guard? Because from the government side, I want to say the government is not letting down its guard. But from the public side of it, from the very beginning of the pandemic, most people didn't believe. Till today, there are some people that don't still believe that there's COVID, and it's unfortunate. The truth is, COVID-19 is real. Like Inslee mentioned earlier, we all know loved ones, prominent Nigerians, people outside this country have died from the COVID. We are seeing on a daily basis. It's unfortunate you go to market, like you rightly said, now if you enter the market, a mall, less than 5% of persons use the face mask. The rest moves about as if nothing is happening. I want to say the effort of the government has not declined. The government is still doing a lot in sensitizing the public, letting the public know. And also from the other aspect of it also, because like you said, why is it that the doom did not come to pass? This is one area that Mr. President, his cabinet, the entire team, our partners in Nigeria from the word go, have put in their very best to see how Nigerians can stay safe, from supporting the technical team that decide on what to do, to the Presidential Steering Committee, supporting the NCDC, supporting our agency, MPACDA, providing all we need to get it done. At the time the vaccine was coming up, they supported, made sure that the vaccines came in and everything came in. That effort is there. But it's just that most people just want to believe there's nothing. And I also want to, I know from the very beginning, and even up till today, there are some, apart from the scientific area, what the government is doing, there are still great men and women of God from all religion, Islam, Muslim, Christianity, that are praying for this nation, praying for the world. Let there be peace. And we know from the beginning, as scientists are doing what they are doing, God also has a role to play in the the health of men. And I know as the government is working very hard, there are people that are also praying for this nation and the world. And I'm happy that the prediction did not come as was predicted about Nigeria, that people will just be falling and dying. I want to advise our Nigerians, citizens, let's not take this thing for granted. And we shouldn't take the grace of God for granted and disobey. There are basic things we need to do. We are said, if you're in public place, use face mask. Frequently wash your hand, use hand sanitizer. But you see a lot still don't want to do that. If talking about the health system, I will say from the other way, instead the health system has improved because a lot has happened in the health space. We've had many hospitals being opened up. We've had equipment being provided. We've had the cold chain system of the country being improved. The communication system, we have more of integration of services from the underlying ministries, MDAs, more than what was not happening before. We have the health budget better than what it was. Here in the country now, we have oxygen plants everywhere. We also, like heard before, we have moved from 3 labs to over 100 labs in the country. So the health system has instead improved. And if you come back to the cold chain, like from our agency side, before we did not have those ultra cold chain equipment in the country. There's no state in the country now that doesn't have ultra cold chain equipment to store our vaccines. So, and a lot has happened through the opportunity provided from the COVID pandemic that the health system has been improved. And I want to advise Nigerians, for those that think COVID is not real, please, they should rethink. You see, I'll bring in here example of what happened in India. Indians had the same perception we are having in Nigeria. There's no COVID, there's nothing. Until the Delta variant entered India. In a day, they were dying over 200,000 persons. Over 2 million cases were being positive. We have the Delta variants in Nigeria. It was not that disastrous. And as far as the immunization is low in the country, we don't have up to 70% and above persons being vaccinated in Nigeria to achieve herd immunity. We don't know of a variant that will come that might sweep off our feet like it did in India. Once the herd immunity is not achieved, the possibility of catching the infection is there, the possibility of mutations of the virus is there. But once that is achieved, it stops transmission, it stops mutation of viruses, and the community is safe. And that's why we advise Nigerians, let's not take the grace of God for granted. Let's not take the effort of the government for granted. Let's do what is needful of us. Get vaccinated, achieve herd immunity, stop the transmission of the virus in Nigeria. And then, even if there are mutations, we will not experience it. The effect and impact from the disease itself will be far reduced in the country, and the economy will begin to improve, and we face other areas of life.
Dr. Puson, thank you very much. I'm sure we all experience it. You go to social gatherings and people are backslapping and shaking hands. When you want to give a fist bump, say, forget Corona has gone. I'm sure we all experience it, and you have to wash your hands, several times. I just wonder, in terms of vaccination, where are we? We know that vaccine nationalism was one of the issues that came up. It was couched in that elegant phrase of vaccine nationalism because poorer nations or developing countries were being denied access to the vaccines, while the developed nations that developed the vaccines were bent on, of course, vaccinating their people and getting herd immunity for their people. So where are we in terms of numbers of vaccinated Nigerians?
As of today, about 16,910,000 Nigerians have received their first dose. Another 8,112,000 their second dose for other vaccines. Now we have introduced J&J. For the fully vaccinated Nigerians, about 8,442,000 have been fully vaccinated. Now, when you look at all, and then for booster, about 904 persons have received their booster. All of them short of 27 million jabs being given in Nigeria as at today. And sometimes I would just wonder that all those skeptics that will say, once you receive the COVID-19 vaccine, you start dancing samba, you will fall and die, all sorts of things will happen. Where are they? We have given about 27 million jabs as of today. None of those things have happened. It's unfortunate you hear some beginning to say, it's after 2 years, some people will begin to die. You know, there's a popular saying, a Friday that will be good, you start seeing it from Wednesday. We have 1 year into vaccination now, another 1 year remaining. So if there are things that we will start seeing effects. But people just want to say bad about the vaccination. A lot of Nigerians, about 12 million jabs have been given. The vaccines are safe, effective, and we are seeing results from those who have received the vaccine. Because, for instance, I know you asked earlier, though the information did not come. As of today, from NCDC side, the number of persons that have been confirmed officially in the lab is about 254,560 persons, with 3,142 deaths. If you look at those people that have died, the statistics from NCDC, what is showing is that 92% of them didn't take the vaccine at all. The remaining proportion are those from comorbid and so on, and also who did not complete their doses yet. So what this means is that if we refuse to take the vaccine, we are unnecessarily exposing ourselves to risk. And
Dr. Wilson, take that again before Dr. Motar comes in. Of the fatalities we have officially from coronavirus, about 3,000 or so, 92% of them. Yeah, please, just
yes,
recast
I was
it.
saying about 3,142 have died so far from official record from NCDC. 92% of those persons never took a dose of the vaccine. The remaining are among those that have other comorbid conditions, or maybe they don't complete their vaccination yet. So you can see 92% of that population did not take the vaccine. That is a lot of message on its own, that we need to protect ourselves. It's unfortunate, Kingsley and Clay, that even yesterday somebody asked me, why is it that people that still take the vaccine still are tested positive? It means the vaccine is not working. I say it's not true. For simple reason. If you take the vaccine, you come out to the public as mentioned earlier, your face is not covered with your face mask. If there's somebody that is infected and you inhale, you will get infected. But when you get infected, the scenarios you are going to see is, if you are taking the vaccination, the probable case what you are going to see is you will remain asymptomatic, no sign, no nothing, because your bodies have already developed antibodies. So once it enters the body, the antibodies fight and you come down with no symptoms. But a few that have not yet developed full immunity to the vaccination, maybe they have not received full vaccination with booster yet, might come down with mild fever, mild headache, tiredness, 1-2 days is over. But for those that have not taken, they end up in isolation center. You can liken this to what we see even in measles vaccination for our children. Mm-hmm. If 100 children take measles vaccine today for the first time, 85%, in other words, 85 of the 100 will receive full lifetime immunity. If they are faced with the virus, they will not come down with the measles. They can transmit the virus to other children without coming down. If you give those children a second opportunity, after 6 months, 10 more will develop lifetime immunity. In other words, 95 over 100 now. Then you give them opportunity for a booster, additional 3, 98%. But the difference is that child that received the first dose but did not attain 100% lifetime immunity yet, if that child comes in contact with measles virus at school, public place, while they were playing, the difference is the measles that child will come down with will be mild. The child will be playing, eating, unlike a child that did not take any vaccine.
Okay. Dr. Okusen, sorry, we're pressed for time. Dr. Mukhtar Muhammad, it's good that we have grown our healthcare response system, facilities, and equipment. One major challenge that we face with us is maintenance. what measures are in place to superintend this equipment so that 6 months' time, 1 year from now, you go there, you know, say, oh, no, this one has broken down. Oh, the other one is not working, X, Y, Z, new budgetary lines and all that. We don't know when the next health challenge might arise, so that we have to have these facilities at peak condition. What is the mechanism for ensuring that proper maintenance takes place?
So certainly this is a culture that needs to be built, and it will take time. It is not something that you just wake up overnight and you say that, bam, you have installed an equipment and then everybody is going to use it. It's not that during the planning or in the early 80s, all of the hospitals that were built, you know, most of them had their oxygen centralized supply system. But because of the lack of maintenance culture, over time, they deteriorated, and the equipment became dilapidated as well. So the maintenance culture has to be